5 minutes like this. Well, Ron, it's really good to be a believer, and your neck is killing and stuff, and you're talking real loud because the plane is so noisy, and the plane is small, and so everybody's listening to this conversation. And Ron, as it turns out, he's a believer too, but he's so discouraged, and he's writing a book called Dead Man Walking, because of the way that he was raised and because of the hurts that he has. And he just needed somebody to just encourage him and to pray with him. And Tony and I knew that we were supposed to pray for Ron. Have you guys ever felt the urge to pray for somebody maybe, and you're like, I'm so glad that God hears my thoughts because I'm not going to pray out loud? But it was like, no. God told both Tony and I, you guys need to put your hands on Ron and you need to pray for him here and now. And I've got to tell you, getting out of that comfort zone was so hard because I had to pray for this crazy guy that everybody had been staring at the whole time. And everybody behind us in the plane could hear what we were saying and watching us. And I have to tell you, I'm not telling you this because, look how wonderful the missionary lady is at praying for people. I'm telling you this because it was hard. Even for those holy, close to God missionaries, it's hard to do something that calls attention to yourself and you feel stupid about doing sometimes. And Ben could tell you that. He's gotten up on the streets and talked about God, and so there we are praying for Ron. And, and I was just so thankful that the Lord gave me that opportunity because sometimes I feel like when I'm living in Brazil, I'm outside of my comfort zone there because it's not my own culture. And so sometimes I feel the freedom to do and say things because I'm not Brazilian anyways. They're going to think I'm weird anyhow. And so I can just kind of do and say, and then they go, oh yeah, that's just Kim. She's that weird American lady. And then when I'm in the States, sometimes I don't feel like I really belong here either. And so I do and say things that probably other people wouldn't do and say because they're worried about what their other Americans are going to think. And I'm like, I don't live here anyways. I'm only going to be here for a few weeks, and so I'm going to do and say what I want. But it was good to have that feeling of, man, I know, God, that you want me to do something here, and I don't want to because it's going to stress me out, and I'm going to risk looking like an idiot in front of all these other people on the plane who don't want to talk to Ron. But you know what? I'm just sharing from my heart, and I just want you guys to just consider the next time that you're confronted with a situation, whether it be at the grocery store, at school, talking to the person that maybe you would rather walk away from, people that, people cross the street so they don't have to walk past, whatever the situation happens to be, a decision at work, a decision at college. Even if it's something that you think, this is going to be scary, this is going to cause me stress, this is risky, it would be so much easier if I just stayed where I was and did what I always did and thought the way that I always thought. I just want to encourage you that there is something so much better on the other side of the comfort zone. If you guys can push through that and just give it up to God and do what you feel Him saying instead of doing what you feel your culture is saying or doing what you feel like, this is what I'm going to do because it's what I've always done and it works. Maybe God has something better for you. And I just want to encourage you with those words. And thank you so much for coming out. You know what? I have one more thing, Ben. You can come up here, though, because it's really quick. One of the things, through this last couple of years we've been in Brazil, there have been so many times where Dan and I have had to kind of, put ourselves out there and risk a lot of things. And sometimes those things haven't worked out the way that we thought they should. So sometimes you take a risk and you feel like it doesn't give you the rewards. You don't get the rewards that you should have gotten by taking that risk. And you know what? Sometimes it happens. You try to talk to somebody at school, but you know what? Maybe they weren't receptive. Or you tried to do something and it didn't turn out the way that you thought it should have. And it happens. And when I was thinking, I was at the table just now and I was thinking, Lord, what do I say? Because sometimes this happens. It's not a magic formula. Oh, I'm just going to do A and B and then God will bless me and I'll get result number C. And so sometimes it doesn't work out that way. And I turned and it was John 13:7. And Jesus replied, this is completely out of context, okay? But I thought it was interesting that this was the verse that I happened to look at. Jesus replied, you don't understand now what I am doing, but someday you will.